The moment Cleo saw her, he abandoned the security guard's desk entirely and ran across the lobby with his arms already open. Nia laughed, crouching just in time to catch him before he barreled into her knees. She buried her face in the top of his head, that familiar scent of shea butter and something faintly like crayons, and for a few seconds, she forgot she'd been standing in a client meeting for 4 straight hours. "Mom," he said, back to look at her face with great seriousness. "Grandma let me press the elevator buttons." "All of them?" He grinned, "Only the ones that had lights." Her mother, Odette, was already crossing the lobby behind him, canvas tote on one arm, and the particular expression she wore when she had allowed something she wasn't supposed to allow. Nia raised an eyebrow. Odette shrugged. Neither of them noticed the man standing near the reception desk until Cleo had already started pulling Nia toward the door. Royce hadn't moved since he spotted them. He'd come to the firm to finalize contract details. His family's development company was partnering on the Meridian waterfront project, and his father had insisted he handle the last round of signatures personally. The meeting had ended 20 minutes ago. He was supposed to be walking to the elevator. Instead, he was standing still in the middle of a lobby, staring at a little boy he had never seen before, and feeling something cold move through his chest. The child had his mouth, the exact same set of it. The way the corners pulled when he smiled, that particular combination of too much confidence and not quite enough patience. Royce had seen that expression in photographs of himself at 4 years old. "Nia," he said. She stopped. Even before she turned around, he saw the change move through her shoulders. The looseness left her body the way water drains. "Who is this?" he asked, keeping his voice low, watching the boy. Nia's hand found Cleo's without looking down. "He's my son." "How old is he?" "Royce." "How old?" She didn't answer. The silence said everything a word couldn't take back. 6 years earlier, Nia had been in a conference room on the 14th floor when Royce walked in for the first time and immediately asked the wrong question. She was presenting the land use analysis for a mixed-income development in the East Side corridor. 3 years of data, 42 slides, a room full of city planners, and 2 representatives from the Callaway Group, the private investment firm co-sponsoring the project. Royce was one of those representatives. He arrived 7 minutes late, poured himself coffee without acknowledging anyone, and then turned to the project coordinator and said, "Which one's leading this?" The coordinator pointed at Nia. Royce sat down. He looked at her the way people look at something that surprised them. She went back to her slide. After the presentation, he stopped her in the hallway. "That was thorough." "That was the job," she said, not slowing down. He fell into step beside her. "I meant it as a compliment." "I know you did." He paused. "Are you always like this?" "Like what?" "Difficult." She stopped walking. "I'm direct. If that reads as difficult to you, that's useful information." She went into the stairwell. He let her go. He called her firm 2 days later to schedule a follow-up meeting. He requested her specifically. Her supervisor mentioned it with the careful tone of someone trying not to smile. Over the following months, the project gave them reasons to be in the same room. Royce stopped trying to be charming, which turned out to be what actually worked. He asked questions instead of making impressions. He remembered things she'd said in passing. When a city council vote threatened to push the project's timeline back by 6 months, he called her at 9 in the evening to think through contingencies, and they stayed on the phone for 2 hours without noticing when the problem turned into conversation. By November, they were having dinner that had nothing to do with the project. She told him on the 3rd date what she always told people early. She wasn't interested in marriage. She'd watched her parents' marriage eat her mother quietly for a decade, and she had no intention of walking into something that felt like a slow erasure. Royce said he understood. She believed him, because he said it calmly, instead of immediately trying to change her mind. That calm, she would later understand, was not acceptance, it was patience. The first real friction came small. He texted once when she was at a work dinner with a colleague to ask who she was with. She told him. He said nothing more about it. But the next day he was quieter, and she noticed. She told herself it was nothing. Then he suggested, gently, reasonably, that she might want to reconsider the sleeveless blazer she'd worn to a panel discussion, because the cameras can be unforgiving. She told him she'd been dressing herself for 30 years and had a strong track record. He laughed and dropped it. But he didn't forget it. The arguments that followed were never about big things. They were always about the distance between what he called caring and what she called encroaching. He wanted to know her schedule. She told him what he needed to know. He called it distance. She called it privacy. He said she treated him like a guest who hadn't earned a key. She said he was trying to move the furniture before they decided he lived there. The last real argument was about his family. His parents, Solomon and Etta Calloway, had been circling the edges of their relationship for months. Etta called Royce often enough that Nia noticed the pattern. Solomon asked pointed questions at the one dinner they'd all shared, about her salary, her lease, her 5-year plan, each question wrapped in pleasantness so thin it was practically transparent. When Royce called her firm's department head to ask about reducing her project travel schedule, because he worried about her, he said, because he thought she was stretched too thin. Nia found out from a colleague who asked if her boyfriend was now her manager. That night, she went to his apartment. "You don't want a partner," she told him. "You want someone who lets you feel in charge." "I want to matter to you," he said. "I've been trying to matter to you for a year and you keep every door at half open. Because you keep pushing on them." He was quiet then. "My parents want to meet you properly. Come to dinner. Let me at least try." She went. She told herself she was going to see who he was when he stood next to them. The Calloway house was the kind of house that made a statement before you got through the door. Solomon sat at the head of the table with the posture of someone who expected rooms to rearrange themselves around him. Etta was gracious in the way that very controlled people are gracious, all surface, nothing given away. Within 20 minutes, Etta had asked whether Nia planned to continue working at this pace after she was married, and Solomon had suggested that a woman in Nia's field might find more stability working on the private side, meaning his company. When Nia declined politely, Etta touched her husband's arm with the small signal of someone who had a backup plan. On the drive home, Royce said, "They just want to feel involved." Nia looked out the window. "They want to feel like they decided something. Can you try to understand their perspective?" "I understand it fine. That's the problem." 2 weeks later, she ended it. He didn't argue, which she hadn't expected. He just sat there looking at the middle distance for a long time, and then said, "Okay." She left. The word followed her out the door and stayed with her longer than she wanted it to. She found out she was pregnant 5 weeks later. She took 3 tests in the bathroom of her apartment on a Tuesday night and sat on the cold tile floor for an hour afterward with the window open, listening to traffic. The first thing she thought about was her project deadlines. The second was her body, which the obgyn would later explain required careful monitoring. Her uterus had a structural irregularity that made this pregnancy higher risk, and if it ended, another might not be possible. She sat with that for 3 days. Then she made an appointment, told her mother, and started doing what she always did when a problem was too large. She broke it into pieces small enough to handle one at a time. Royce had a right to know. She believed that fully, even when every other part of her resisted it. She texted him. He responded within minutes. He was already at the restaurant when she arrived. Same place they'd gone for their first real dinner, which was either thoughtful or optimistic or both. "Are you coming back to me?" he asked, before she'd sat down. She put the medical paperwork on the table, instead of answering. He read it slowly. Then he set it down and looked at her, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Is it mine?" He caught himself immediately. "I don't mean that. I don't know why I said that." She watched him. His jaw was tight. He wouldn't look at her directly. "I haven't thought about being a father," he said finally. "We just broke up. I'm not ready for this." "Neither am I," she said. She picked up her bag. He grabbed her wrist. "Don't go. We're not done. You've said what you needed to say. I just need time to think." "I'll be raising this child," she told him, "with or without you. You can take whatever time you need to decide what you want your role to be." She drove home. He called 11 times. She didn't answer. He was outside her apartment the next morning. No flowers, no ring. Just him in yesterday's shirt, looking like he hadn't slept. "I'll take responsibility," he said. "This isn't a debt," she told him. "I want to be part of this." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then figure out what that actually means to you. Not what your father would want, not what sounds right, what you actually mean." He came back 4 days later and said he wanted to do this properly. He wanted her to meet his parents again. He wanted them to know. She agreed to go. She needed to see it. The dinner was worse than the first. Solomon spent most of it outlining, pleasantly and inexorably, the ways Nia would need to adjust her life after the baby. Etta talked about the guest house on the property, as though Nia had already agreed to live there. When Nia said clearly and without heat that she wouldn't be stepping back from her career, Solomon looked at Royce with the expression of a man waiting for his son to handle something. Royce looked at his plate. On the drive back, Nia didn't speak. Royce said, "They mean well." "I know," she said, and said nothing else. 3 days later, Etta called her office line. She asked to meet for coffee near the planning department building, and added, "It's about the child." Nia arrived first. Etta was already there. "You're pregnant," Etta said, not as a question. "Royce didn't tell me, but I know. That's between Royce and me. A Callaway child isn't a private matter." Etta slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "This would allow you to start over, comfortably, somewhere better suited to where you are in your life." Nia didn't look at the number. "You want to buy my child. I want to make sure my grandchild grows up with what he or she deserves." "And the mother?" Etta looked at her steadily. "You're a city employee with a rental apartment and a career that depends on public contracts. If certain information were shared in the right circles about your personal life, your choices, that career could become considerably more fragile." She lifted her coffee cup. "I'm not threatening you. I'm describing a reality." Nia said nothing. "You're young," Etta continued. "You have time to build something. But a custody battle with this family, at this point in your life, is not something you would survive intact." Nia left without touching her coffee. She walked for 40 minutes in the cold before she got into her car. Her hand rested on her stomach the whole drive home. She wasn't crying. She was thinking, very carefully, very precisely, about what she knew and what she couldn't prove, and what would happen if she told Royce his mother had just tried to purchase her unborn child. He would confront Etta. Etta would soften it, reframe it, make it sound like concern taken too far. And Royce would ask Nia to be patient, to give his family time, because he always did. He would stand between them and call it balance. She couldn't build a life for her child on that ground. A week later, she let Royce into her apartment. He was carrying a small box. She could tell by the shape, and he looked like he'd rehearsed whatever he was about to say. She told him she'd lost the baby before he could open it. The box stayed in his hand. He didn't move for a long time. "When?" he finally asked. "After the dinner with your parents." "Why didn't you call me?" "What would you have done?" He set the box on the table without opening it. "I would have been there." She looked at him. "You were there, Royce. You were there for all of it. And you chose to look at your plate." He left an hour later. He called twice after that. She answered the second time and told him she needed space. Then he stopped calling. Nia had her mother move in within the month. Odette arrived with 3 suitcases and a clear-eyed silence that meant she had already done her grieving about this situation privately and was now ready to be useful. "You're sure?" Odette said on the first night. "I'm sure," Nia said. "And the father doesn't know." Odette looked at her for a long moment. "Okay," she said and started unpacking. The pregnancy was hard. There were 2 hospital stays, one scare at 22 weeks that left Nia white-knuckled and calculating in the way she recognized as her body's mechanism for controlling fear. Odette slept in the next room with the door open. Cleo was born 6 weeks early, small and furious and perfect. Nia held him in the delivery room and thought about the number on that folded piece of paper and felt a pure, uncomplicated anger that she decided then to use as fuel instead of weight. She went back to work when Cleo was 4 months old. She took him to Odette's every morning at 7:15, picked him up by 6. On nights when a project ran late, Odette kept him until she arrived, no matter the hour, arriving in slints with a container of food and leaving the same way. When Cleo was 3.5, he asked where his dad was. She'd thought about this moment for a year. None of her prepared answers felt honest. "Your dad lives somewhere else," she told him. "Does he know about me?" She held his gaze. "Not yet." He was quiet for a moment, processing this in the particular way he processed things, mouth pressed closed, eyes moving slightly. Then he nodded and went back to his blocks. He didn't ask again. She wondered sometimes whether he had understood more than she'd said, or whether he was simply giving her the same thing she gave him when she didn't want to answer. Space. The afternoon Royce recognized Cleo in her firm's lobby. Nia drove home with her hands steady on the wheel and her chest doing something she couldn't name. Odette sat in the passenger seat and didn't ask. Cleo talked about a fire truck he'd seen on the street. Royce texted that evening, "Can we meet tomorrow morning? Just us." She didn't reply. He texted again the next morning. "I counted back, Nia. I did the math, please." She met him at a coffee shop 2 blocks from her office. He was there before her. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Tell me I'm wrong," he said. She sat down. She didn't answer. "You told me you lost the baby." "I know what I told you." He pressed his hand against his mouth for a moment. "You raised him. You've been raising him and you let me believe." He stopped. "I grieved a child I didn't know was alive." "I know. You don't get to just say I know." "You're right," she said. "I was wrong to lie to you. I've known that from the beginning." He looked at her across the table. "Then why?" "Because your mother came to see me." She watched his face change. "She had my office number. She met me 2 days before you showed up with that box. She offered me money to disappear and told me what would happen to my career if I didn't take it." The silence stretched. "My mother offered to raise our child without me. Politely, over coffee." Nia kept her voice even. "I thought about telling you. I thought about it for a week. But every time I imagined what would happen next, I saw the same thing. You'd confront her, she'd walk it back, and you'd ask me to be patient. The way you always asked me to be patient with them." Royce was quiet for a long time. "I wouldn't have." "I didn't know that," she said. "I was 3 months pregnant, alone, and I had watched you look at your plate instead of at me when your father made decisions about my life at his dinner table. I made the choice I made because I couldn't trust what I didn't know." She paused. "That was wrong. I'm telling you it was wrong. But I need you to understand what I was afraid of." He sat back. He didn't say anything for a long time. "Can I see him?" he finally asked. "Not yet," she said. "He doesn't know who you are. I have to tell him the truth first, and I have to do that in a way that doesn't frighten him. He's my son. He's a 5-year-old who has never heard your name." She met his eyes. "Give me 2 weeks." She told Cleo on a Saturday morning while they were building a cardboard city on the kitchen floor. He was fitting a cereal box into a corner lot, considering it with the intensity he brought to most problems, when she said his name and he looked up. "You remember the man at my office," she said, "the tall one who stopped to talk to us?" Cleo thought about it. "The one who kept looking at me." "Yes." "Is he my dad?" She hadn't gotten there yet. She stopped. "How did you?" "He looked at me like Grandma looks at my baby pictures," Cleo said simply, like he was trying to remember something. Nia felt something in her chest go quiet and aching at once. "Yes," she said, "he's your dad." Cleo put down the cereal box. "Did he know about me?" "He didn't. That was my fault. I made a mistake and didn't tell him." "Is he mad?" "At me, not at you." "Does he want to see me?" "He does. But you don't have to do anything you're not ready for. I'll be there every time." Cleo thought about this seriously. "Does he know how to play cards?" Nia almost laughed. "I don't know." "Okay," Cleo said, "he can come. But if he doesn't know how to play cards, you have to teach him first so it's not embarrassing." The first few meetings were careful. Royce arrived to a park with 3 different types of snacks, none of which Nia had approved, and one of which contained pecans, which she caught before it got anywhere near Cleo's hand, and spent the first 20 minutes visibly trying to calculate how to talk to a child he didn't know. Cleo spent the same 20 minutes watching him with frank assessment. Eventually, Cleo said, "You're nervous." Royce looked at him. "A little. Mom gets nervous before big presentations. She makes tea, but she doesn't drink it." "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Cleo said. "I'm 5. He pulled out a deck of cards. "Do you know how to play Go Fish?" Royce did not. He lost 4 rounds. He didn't pretend to let Cleo win, which Nia filed away as information. He was too proud to throw a card game, which was potentially a problem, but too honest to fake it, which was not. By the 3rd visit, Cleo was walking next to him instead of next to Nia. By the 5th, he had started calling him Dad in the casual, half-distracted way children use words they've decided belong to them. Royce texted Nia that night. "He called me Dad 3 times today. I counted." She stared at the message for a long time before she typed back, "I know, I was there." He sent a laughing emoji, which she would not have predicted. His parents found out on a Wednesday. Solomon called Royce that evening. Nia learned about it later, in pieces, with the careful neutrality of someone relaying information they know will land badly. He wants to meet Cleo, Royce said. No. Nia. Not yet. Not until I know what your parents plan to do with that relationship. She looked at him directly. Your mother tried to buy our child, Royce. I need more than your reassurance before I put him in a room with her. He didn't argue. She noted that too. The following Saturday, Royce took Cleo to the Children's Science Museum, a plan Nia had agreed to, with routes and times and a commitment to have Cleo home by 6. She had saved every text confirming it. She trusted Royce in the way she was learning to trust him. Incrementally, provisionally, watching what he did when no one was watching. She was at her drafting table at 4:15 when Cleo's location on her phone shifted northeast, toward the Callaway estate. She called Royce. He answered on the third ring. His voice had the tight quality of someone managing 2 conversations at once. Where are you taking him? She said. My father. We had an agreement. It's just a short visit, an hour. You said you understood why I don't want him there yet. I do understand. But my father threatened to come find him if I didn't bring him. She was already standing up, already reaching for her keys. So you brought our 5-year-old to a house I told you was not safe for him instead of calling me first. He's not unsafe, he's with me. Royce, her voice was steady. I trusted you. The call ended. She drove. She stood outside the iron gate of the Callaway property for 27 minutes. She could hear Cleo inside, not his words, just his voice, and then nothing, and the nothing was worse than anything. The security guard at the gate said he had instructions not to open it. She told him she was the child's mother. He apologized. She called Royce 7 times. He answered once and told her Cleo was fine. She pressed the intercom and held it. Inside, Cleo had sat in the center of a living room filled with objects chosen to impress, and asked Solomon if he had any cards. Solomon did not. Etta offered cookies. Cleo asked what kind. Etta said pecan. Cleo said he couldn't have nuts. Etta said he'd be fine with just one. They were small. Royce stepped between them and took the plate away before Cleo could reach it. His voice when he spoke to his mother was quiet and final, in a way Etta apparently had not heard from him before. She didn't offer anything else. But Cleo had heard his mother's voice through the intercom, and then the voice stopped, and he asked Royce why Mom wasn't coming in. Royce said she was on her way. Cleo said he wanted to go meet her. He walked to the front door and stood in front of it with both hands at his sides. Not crying. Not shouting. Just waiting with the absolute certainty of a child who has never had reason to doubt that his mother would come. Royce opened the gate. Nia was already at the intercom when the bars swung apart. She walked through without breaking stride. Cleo saw her from the front steps and came down them at a run. She went to her knees on the driveway and caught him. And he was shaking slightly in the way children shake when they have been holding something together for too long. Mom, he said into her shoulder. I'm here, she said. I'm right here. She held him for a full minute. She was aware of Royce standing 10 feet away, and Solomon behind him in the doorway, and Etta somewhere behind that. She didn't look at any of them. When Cleo's breathing settled, she stood up, took his hand, and walked toward the gate. Nia, Royce said. She stopped. I'm sorry, he said. I knew it was wrong when I was doing it. She looked at him. His face had the expression of someone who had watched something they loved walk toward an edge and chosen too late not to follow. I know, she said. She picked Cleo up and carried him to her car. Royce came to her building 3 days later. He stood outside and called her, and when she came down, he looked thinner. The way people look when they've been eating around the edges of meals. I talked to my parents, he said. I set limits. If they want a relationship with Cleo, it happens on terms that both of us agree to. My father didn't like it. And, your mother? He was quiet for a moment. She admitted she came to see you. She said she was protecting the family. He looked up. I told her that protecting the family is not the same as what she did. Nia said nothing. I'm not asking you to forgive anyone, Royce said. I'm telling you what I did so you can decide what it means. He looked at the sidewalk. I want to keep being Cleo's father. Not as leverage, not to get back to where we were. Just him. She studied him. He has nightmares now, she said, about gates that don't open. Royce closed his eyes briefly. He'll get past them, she said. If you're consistent, if every time you say you'll bring him home, you bring him home. She looked at him steadily. Can you do that? Yes. Then, we'll keep going. It took 4 more months before the nightmares stopped. It took 6 before Cleo stopped instinctively checking the exits when they entered a new place. Nia documented neither of these things for any legal purpose. She simply watched and waited and held Royce to the schedule they'd agreed on, which he met without exception. Solomon did not attend the informal mediation they eventually held to establish the formal arrangement. Etta came and sat in the hallway. Royce went in alone and agreed, without negotiation, that Cleo would live with Nia, that overnight visits would begin only when Cleo wanted them, that Solomon and Etta would not have unsupervised contact without the approval of both parents. Nia's attorney had prepared a counteroffer in case Royce pushed back. He didn't push back. Afterward, standing outside the mediator's building, Royce said, "I'm not going to pretend the last several months didn't happen." "Good," she said. "I'm also not going to pretend I was only motivated by Cleo." He looked at her. "I wanted to win. I wanted you to feel what I felt when I found out. I know that about myself now." She watched him. "It's not who I want to be," he said. "That's the only reason I'm saying it." She nodded slowly. "It's a start." On a Thursday evening 8 months later, Nia picked Cleo up from Royce's apartment, a place she had chosen not to go inside yet. Not while the boundary still helped her feel like herself. Cleo came down carrying a model airplane they'd built together, holding it with the focused care of someone transporting something irreplaceable. He got into the car and immediately told her about the wing design. She drove with one hand on the wheel and the other elbow out the window, listening to him explain. In technical terms, he had clearly invented himself why this particular plane would be faster than any real airplane. "Did Dad help with the wings?" she asked. "He held the pieces," Cleo said seriously. "I told him where they went." She smiled at the windshield. "Mom," Cleo said. Dad asked me if you were happy. He considered the wing. I told him you were mostly happy. I told him you make tea when you're not." She glanced at him in the rearview mirror. He was already back to studying the plane. "What did he say?" she asked. "He said he's going to try to change that." Cleo looked up. "What does that mean?" Nia kept her eyes on the road for a moment. "It means," she said finally, "that he's learning." Cleo accepted this. He turned the airplane once in his hands, watching the way the streetlights moved across the wings. Outside, the city slid past. Lit windows, a dog being walked, 2 people laughing at a corner. All of it ordinary and indifferent, and exactly the kind of thing you forget to notice when you spend too many years looking over your shoulder. Nobody in a story like this is purely innocent. Nobody is purely the villain either. The truth lives in the distance between what people fear and what they're actually capable of. When they finally stop letting that fear make every decision for them. Nia had made choices she wasn't proud of. So had Royce. What mattered in the end was not who had been right. What mattered was the boy in the back seat, holding a model plane like it was made of something precious, already thinking about the next one he would build. And the fact that both of his parents had finally chosen to be worthy of him.